We're Ashley and Sabrina,
your co-host for Ruckup Buttercup podcast.
Military life can be challenging,
but also has its advantages.
Come and be part of the unfiltered
and sometimes unhinged conversations with fellow military spouses, Kayla and Laura, as we dive into the occasional rant
and rave of military life.
Share the stories that make us who we are,
and showcase the amazing organizations
and resources out there that make our lives a little bit better.
Whether you're new
or a seasoned military family,
we all need a little extra love.
So, Ruckup Buttercup, we got your six.
You can also hear us on Wreath Across America Radio on Women in Media Wednesdays at 11 p.m. See you there.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Ruckup Buttercup. It is spooky season, it's October, and we are here for those vibes. So it's a girl chat today. We were supposed to have a guest with us today, but due to some technical issues, they are not able to join us, but we will continue. We will share some of her information if you're into what we're talking about today towards the end of the episode. So spooky vibes. We are going to talk about something that we've never talked about on this podcast. We were throwing around ideas of what we could discuss on this podcast because we were kind of running out of ideas, and our operations director was like, you guys should talk about the weird things that happen on installations. And I'm like, oh, that's a great idea. So we are talking all things spooky, myths, legends that happen on or around installations.
And it makes so much sense, right? Like, I mean, some of these installations have been here like Civil War era, right? So that, like, they've been around. So there's got to be some history.
Just to put in perspective of that. So let's say, Fort Benning and Fort Bragg were both started in 1918. Okay. And we'll talk a little bit more about those installations coming up in the podcast. But like, to put in perspective, Fort Leavenworth was 1827.
Yeah. I have an article pulled up that we're going to talk about Fort Huachuca. It's 1880 because it was like the Indians and stuff.
Yeah. I was like, West Point is 1778. Fort McNair is 1791. I'm trying to see if there's something older than any of these. Norfolk Naval Shipyard is 1776. I mean, there's so many different ones. So, I mean, it makes sense that, especially, as we're looking at this, Fort Leavenworth is considered one of the most haunted installations that's still around, that's still operating today. And there's apparently over 30 different types of encounters that people have experienced. So not just the same one, but 30 different ones. So we're going to talk about a couple of those today. I think we're going to share some of our personal experience. I know I've had experiences at Fort Bragg area, so we'll chat about those. I mean, obviously this is what everyone's own belief when it comes to spooky things. I'm a huge ghosty girly. I think they are for 100% real, whether it's a manifestation or whatever the case may be, but I think that there are presences. But let's talk about a couple different ones. So let's talk about Fort Leavenworth first, because it's considered the most haunted active duty Army post. And so some of the stories that you hear, the most common ones, are the rookery where there is a woman in gray in white. We hear women in white in a lot of locations. I think there's one at Fort Bragg, there's one at Fort Benning, there's one at Leavenworth. I think that's just also, pure cold clothing, or white light color clothing. So that ghosty appearance could be white, but different things. There's just so many different things, but it makes sense that, the older installations have those.
Yeah. I mean, you gotta think about the fact that Civil War did happen in those places, mm-hmm. and in those ones, in that case, Revolutionary War. So how many deaths have happened at that installation or very near that installation, that it would make sense if they were going to haunt somewhere, it would be the place that killed them. So it makes sense that those ones would have definitely some spooky stories.
Yeah. I mean, this whole topic kind of came up when we were talking about how Fort Bragg, there's a couple different stories, but the one that we were kind of chatting about was this murder-suicide, and that how a lot of the housing at Bragg has this reputation of being haunted, where they hear
most housing though.
I feel like you do. I feel like, I mean,
there's a whole Facebook here for it.
Oh, there's Facebook pages. I didn't realize how many Facebook pages there are. I mean, our guest that was supposed to be here today, Bridget Sider, she has spent over 20 years researching just these myths and legends at Fort Benning, and we wrote a whole book about like researching them and like, you know, whether they were solved mysteries or, you know, whatever the case may be. She had over 20 years of experience, and she'd put together all of these stories, and there's a lot of stories here at Benning. Like, I was kind of looking at it, kind of prepping for this episode, and I'm like, oh yeah. And I remember
there's a subreddit for it too now. There's what? A subreddit. There's like a whole subreddit for the different bases. And I was like, what? Because I only found out about the little Facebook group for Fort Hood because I was tagged because it was my old house.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Like,
because that's where my late husband passed. Oh yeah.
Okay, so what did they say? What did they say?
That they saw a man that looked like a modern day soldier, so not like, you know, somebody young that was just at the house. And I was like,
that's crazy. So like one of the stories I was looking at for Bragg, so Bragg has the like, so jump schools here at, not Bragg, Benning. So jump schools here at Benning, and they have these huge towers, like you see them driving around. And apparently there's a story of a young soldier who had a training accident, fell 60 feet, broke all of his bones, mangled his face, survived, but ended up passing away several weeks later due to like pneumonia or something while he was recovering. And they see his figure on the field and in the barracks all the time, apparently. And I was like, oh, that's crazy. And like they see a soldier with like, you know, the face is like, you know, like broken and mangled and bloody. And I'm like, oh, that's just crazy that there's all these different stories. But like the Bragg one that I was just saying, people hear slamming doors because it was a domestic, you know, murder suicide, slamming doors, a woman crying, shouting, and then there's nobody there. And that's been happening since the early that happened in the early 90s. So like people for the last like 2 decades have been like experiencing that. There's also a section of housing on Bragg that you'll hear a child crying or toys being moved. And there was a report of a child passing from domestic violence, and in one of those houses that it happens in. And so there's a lot of crazy circumstances.
Yeah. So I was looking at Fort Huachuca because we talked about that, and we just came from Fort Huachuca. And when you drive around like the parade field, there's these houses that are old. And I was looking at them. They were built in the 1880s. They are from like when it was first built. It's still there. So the one that they were talking about on this article is called the Carlton House. And I guess at some point it used to be an 8-bedroom hospital as well. So there was a woman who died during childbirth. So I guess it's pretty innocent, but they see her in the rocking chair with a baby often in that house. And it's still used as officer housing, which is what we were laughing about. I was like, oh, wow, you get to be an officer in these big, beautiful, really old haunted houses. Like, I think it's funny because that ends up happening a lot. I think on a lot of bases, a lot of the officers' housings are like, they're really big, like really nice, but they're really old houses.
That's how it is at Fort Sam.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it's funny because they call like parts of Fort Hood are like the Phantom Warrior thing or section and all that stuff. And people have been like, is there a Fort Hood Phantom? Because there's like all these ghost stories surrounding Fort Hood and all the soldiers that have died either on post or off post or tragic accident.
Especially like with those like missing, like especially with Fort Hood specifically, like you have a really high volume, I feel, of like,
and not only that, but like
deaths that happen.
Not only that, but before Killeen was Killeen, when it was Maxdale, because Killeen's had like 3 different names: Palo Alto, Maxdale, now Killeen. Yeah, little history lesson there for you. The Maxdale Bridge was, and it's not closed now, but it leads to the Maxdale Cemetery, and that is like a lot of the off-post ghost stories are surrounded that bridge and that little area specifically. And it's funny how
I've been there. That's where I used to take pictures all the time with my clients.
yeah. So it's funny that those are where if it's not on post in like the barracks or housing specifically, it's that Maxdale Bridge.
Yeah, and when we were coming up with the topic, I thought it was interesting, and I wondered, I didn't have a chance to really look into it too much, but I wonder if like the Pearl Harbor area, because the amount of death there
And
that was
I feel
seen.
like we, like anywhere there's like been a traumatic experience, you know, a lot of the, like if you go and research, like, you know, especially these older installations like Fort Leavenworth, you know, West Point, things like that. Like I'm looking at one for Fort Leavenworth right now, and this one's off base, but it's a woman, her children were lost in a winter storm in the 1880s, and she ended up dying of ammonia when she was out, when she caught searching for them. And she has said that they can see her searching with the lantern through the national cemetery there. Like that's where the location that they were at. And so they see a woman with a lantern often in the cemetery. And I feel like you have those stories all over the place. Like I know I have a story. I don't know if I've shared this with you guys before. So we actually lived in one of the oldest houses that was built in Rayford. And 100% that house was haunted by the original owner, Lily. And we actually had to do research to figure this out. And so how we kind of figured out it was haunted. So when we first bought the house, I was like 5. My younger sister was like 3. And we would have like weird things happening. Like things would be moved. You would hear walking. You would hear cats meow. We didn't have a cat at the time. And then my younger sister had a friend that she would talk to. And my mom thought it was just a friend. Like, you know, she saw me and my sister play pretend Barbies and things like that. Well, one day she was in there supposedly taking a nap, and she was having a full conversation with something. So my mom walked in and she's like, "What are you doing? You're supposed to be sleeping." And she's like, "Well, I'm just talking to my friend Lily." And we're like, "Lily? Like, you don't know a Lily. You've never heard of the name Lily. Like, where did you come up with that?" And so my mom started, you know, after like all the weird incidents, she started doing some research on the owner of the house, and come to find out the original owner of the house was in fact named Lily. And boy, oh boy, was this lady a character. And it's a very murder mystery. Like you're all going to think I'm making this up. But so she was a crazy lady. She would not let anyone in the house. Like she used to keep this like curtain in the front of the house and only let like people who absolutely had to come into the house. So we ended up finding her great nephew, and he wasn't even allowed in the house. Like if he came over, he had to sit in the chair and wait for his dad to do his things, and then they would leave. She had 4 husbands, all of which either died mysterious deaths or completely disappeared. One was actually murdered inside the house by her brother, but everyone thinks Lily did it, but brother took the fall. When we bought the house, the door still had axe marks in the door. And so it's just crazy. Like, it's just crazy. And I remember when I was in the 3rd grade, seeing a female figure on the opposite end of the house. So the house is like a really old house. So think plantation style, like had a really long hallway, and then all the rooms are off that hallway. So you could see from one side of the house to the end of the house. And so I had come into the front door of the house and had seen a figure go right by. So, which I always thought it was really fascinating and interesting. I've always, like I said, I'm a huge like ghosty. I think they're interesting that, you know, presences linger to continue on with unfinished business or whatever the case may be. But I remember like my friends would never want to come over to my house because they're like, "Your house is weird." And I'm like, "It's not weird. You just have to, you know, tell Lily to knock it off," and she knocks it off. And they don't like that. But, you know,
I don't feel like I've ever lived in a haunted house. The apartments we lived at when we lived in Hawaii were really old, and the barracks that Dustin was first stationed in had like the bullet holes and still like from Pearl Harbor in it. So that maybe was probably the spookiest place I stayed, is in that, I guess. But like,
I definitely
you don't know what the sounds are, whether it's just
in Germany.
It could be crazy soldiers making sounds down the hall, so you never really knew what you were hearing though, anyways.
That's true. I mean, my mom is very similar with me. Like, I mean, that house was built in, the house my mom currently lives in I also feel like I've heard footsteps when no one's been up, but they're all built in the early 1800s. So they're all extremely old homes. They've been around for a really, really long time. But, even just going to places that have had, me, living overseas and stuff like that and visiting historical sites, I've had a lot of death and stuff like that. Like there's a heavy presence that's there that you can feel that, the weight of like what happened there, whether that's just something I feel like internally, like I don't know what the word it's not empathy.
You kind of manifest it, like the feeling in yourself because you're in some historical place that bad, because I had that same like kind of feeling when we would go to like see the concentration camps in Germany. 100%, like you
feel
this
it feels
feeling.
heavy. Yeah.
Yeah, and I've been to Pearl Harbor, and Pearl Harbor is definitely that. Like, and there is just so much of that respect. I think even when you visit now, which has been a long time since Pearl Harbor, but the people and everybody around that is there, you just feel that like, oh my gosh, underneath like literally under your feet. You walk out on that bridge, there's hundreds of people that are dead right underneath of you. And
I think it also like is a heavier impact too. Like if you're a person who does the research and learns about that before going and stuff like that. I've always been a huge like history person. Like I like learning about like all the historical things. So I think that knowing the gravity of it and then going there, it does change your perspective. But it does make sense of why people would have those like encounters at places like that, whether it's manifested and they just think that's what they see, or if it is something they're actually seeing. I mean, I feel like there's way too many encounters for that not to be true, but I guess it's anyone's belief when it comes to that.
I also think that the story that you hear to feel that way matters, because like when we go on the UT campus, my dad was there in the 60s when the tower shooter was up on the LBJ library sniping people. And my dad, like when I remember it from when I was little, like he would tell in detail about what he was doing, driving around. Him and his buddies were at Schultz's beer garden. It was nickel beer night, and they were at least a roll of nickels deep into their beers. And they decided, they were like, oh, we heard about this. Let's go drive around in my convertible in the shooting radius. And I'm like, Dad, really? But like when we walk past that tower, that story is what pops in my brain.
Yeah. Well, and it's just crazy. I think like the stories behind it are really like are what's really interesting. Like when you see a sighting and then it's able to be linked to a actual historical story, it brings that story to life, or that sighting to life a little bit more. So like when you're looking at these, there's so many sightings and stories. Like, I'm kind of just looking through them and kind of like, oh, this one's really funny at Fort Warren because she like disguises herself. The story is her name was Melanie, and her husband was a Confederate soldier who was in prison at Fort Warren during the Civil War. And she disguised herself as a man, like cut her hair, made herself look like a soldier, snuck into the prison to try to rescue him. There ended up being like a scuffle. He ended up getting shot and dying. And then she was tried, convicted, and hanged for trying to help him. And, her request was, can I please have a dress to wear, since she was dressed up as a man, and they couldn't find her a dress. So they ended up putting her in like a black robe. And so there are sightings of a cloaked figure, womanish figure who hunts the Fort Warren in the passages. And I'm just like, that's like, but that's a story. Like they see a cloaked figure, they see this, but then there's a story that ties it together. So it makes it more believable, more engaging. But when there's so many sightings of it, it's interesting to come down to it. I don't know. But I think they're interesting.
When I was stationed at Fort Sam, I was changing my MOS, and the barracks that we were staying in, supposedly, again, rumor mill, but we would always hear like showers would randomly turn on, doors would close, all that stuff. And somebody said that the barracks that we lived in used to be part of the hospital system, which made sense because there were, like, you could tell, like, legit it was part of the hospital system. Whether it was truly the psych ward like they said or not, it was part of the hospital system. You could still see some of the old stuff that was on the wall that definitely made it hospital-ish, clinic, something of the medical nature. And it was just crazy how once that story, it spread like wildfire. And all of a sudden, all these people were like, oh yeah, I saw this and I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and it's like you got to kind of like filter out like what, like, you know, is someone saying they saw something just to kind of fit in because someone else said they saw something, or like are they genuinely seeing it? You know, I feel like you can tell those who are genuine about it, like where they're like, no, for real, I saw this, like they're dead set, like this has happened, and then you can kind of figure out the ones who are joking about it because then they're like, oh, I never said that type of thing, like later down the road. I mean, it's definitely one of those, like, it's so taboo too. Like, so like you have people who talk about it. Like, I didn't realize how many people were asking questions on like the spouses pages until I started looking through his spouses pages to see like who's been like researching this. And the amount of people who were like, someone was at my door knocking, but there's no way they could have been knocking because I have a screen porch and the screen is locked. So how is someone knocking on my door? To reports of crying, reports of screaming, reports of, you know, walking. Yeah, old houses shift very differently from new houses. So could it be a natural thing? Probably. But, you know,
Flickering lights, old wiring.
like that's going to be like what a lot of people say. But, you know,
I mean, my house was built in the 90s, and if I turn on my 3D printer, but I have my overhead light on, these, because of the type of light they are, they pulse. So I turn that one off just because, one, it drives my eyes nuts. But then I don't have to hear my kid be like, get the salt every time the light flashes. And I'm like, yes, but also it's just a 3D printer.
I don't know. Like, I just definitely think that there's definitely a lot of reports, and a lot of them do surround military installations. But a lot of those military installations were already kind of built on historical ground. I mean, think about Fort Bragg and Fort Benning. Like, the areas have been utilized by, you know, settlers and the Native Americans and things like that for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. That there's bound to be some type of lingering presence or whatever it is you want to call. I don't know. I think it's just one of those things where like it's interesting to read about and it's interesting to see, and if anything, it's an interesting like way to learn like stories of like tragic endings and kind of put a face to those things. Because like when we read things about the Civil War and stuff like that, we don't get a lot of those like individual stories. Like we learn like the basics, like the battle of this, the battle of that. But when you are looking at these haunting stories, you're getting a little like insight of potential like individual stories, if that makes sense. Does that make sense?
I mean,
I don't know.
You can look back or look up even stories that, I mean, they were bases. I guess they were missions back then, but like the Alamo, of that they see not only, you know, Texans, but Mexican soldiers walking the grounds, protecting those grounds. And they've been doing a lot of construction down there on restoring it. And there have been so many more like, hey,
oh yeah, think about that.
On the construction site, and we just saw this. And it was crazy how many more are now recirculating and repopping up because, you know, they're restoring the Alamo and all that. But think about, I mean, again, a lot of people died at the Alamo. A lot of people died at a lot of those Civil War bases, sites, all that stuff. And yeah, there has to be ghosts.
I mean, when you have so many, so like for instance, like West Point has like two spirits that have names, Molly and Greer, because there's been so many sightings of them. There's been so many things that have happened that like clearly that you know, there's something there. So like it's saying like, you know, their spirits, like, you know, are known to stop clocks and throw things, and there's footsteps and voices and things like that. Where you have like other historical places, like that's just military installations we're talking about. Like, let's talk about like some of the other like locations that are like extremely well-known haunted places around the country that have, there's so many places. So like, I feel like if you're really interested into this, there's, especially at installations, you could easily find stories to research and find those interesting things. I remember growing up at Benning. So when we were stationed at Benning, and I don't know if this is true, so now I was really hoping Bridget was going to be on this, because I was hoping that we could talk. I was going to get to talk to her about this. But I remember there was a hill in the housing area that we lived at, and there's this huge drop off. So it's on the trail to go to the school, and it was called Dead Man's Hill. And I vividly remember as a third grader, so like someone telling me like an old man or a man died on his bike riding around the corner too fast down this hill, and now he haunts that area of the trail. Did I ever see anything? No, but I do remember like just paddling as fast as I could past that spot in third grade, so I wouldn't get knocked over, because the legend was, is like you watch out because he would knock you over. And I was like, I'm not going to get knocked over on my bike. Was that just a bunch of elementary school kids trying to pull a fast one? I don't know, but I vividly remember people talking about that. So I was hoping that Bridget was going to be on here so I could ask her if that is actually a true legend, or if that was something just made up during the time that I was here. But unfortunately, she is not. But she has written a whole book on the Fort Benning legends, and I think that's really interesting, because there are a lot of sightings here at Fort Benning. But it's like, all these tragic events, like if you go and search, I did a quick search and found like, there's, suicides, murders, tragic, childbirth, things like that, like something tragic that happens that's causing them to linger. It's just kind of there.
And like you're saying, it's interesting because it's the historical, like I like the history and the stories behind it. Like, I don't know what I believe as far as goes, but like the stories behind like why people think there is things. And I was looking at the Leavenworth stuff, and there are podcasts about Leavenworth, which is interesting. That I'm gonna have to go listen to, just for the spooky season vibes, and just kind of listen to see like what the stories are behind it, because that's what I like, is to just like to get myself spooked out at this time of year, whether it's true or not. Like, I think it's fun.
Have y'all ever gone to like, so when I was stationed in Fort Stewart, we would go to Savannah, and they have like a ghost tour. So, oh my gosh, I love those.
Oh, what's that hotel called in Colorado?
I've stayed there.
So we stayed there, but we didn't stay in the hotel. We stayed in one of the like on property like condos, but we did the ghost tour, and I was like, this is so crazy. Like, and of course my husband was a negative Nancy, he was along with that, and I was like, you're never allowed to go on a ghost tour because you're scaring all the ghosts away, because they can feel your presence, and you're just ruining this experience for us who want to experience it. No, but we did do that. That was a lot of fun. We were actually supposed to do a haunted tour when we lived overseas. Me, my mom, and my sisters were supposed to do one in Scotland and Ireland. Like, we were going to go all to the different, like, well-known haunted locations.
I did one of those. Those were
But
cool.
we ended up having to cancel that trip, so we didn't get to do that. But, I feel like I've gone to so many locations in Europe that have that presence, like Auschwitz, Normandy Beach, things like that. Like, all of those locations that have those sightings already. I think those are fun. And it's, again, a great way to learn historical facts about that location, because 9 out of 10 times they're having a story that goes along with that sighting. And so I think it's a fun way to learn your location. I kind of need to see if there's one for Benning. That would be fun to do here in October.
There probably is one, I would assume.
I totally want to go to Salem during spooky season.
Me too. That would be
fun. But you have to like plan that like 5 years in advance.
I'm sure you do. I'm sure you do. But it is just so many different, things, and it's the perfect time to get into that vibe of spooky season. Like, if you want to look at something that's happening in your location, research it. You could probably honestly go onto the spouse page and just type in like weird happenings, Hauntings, whatever, and come up with a whole bunch of posts that you can just look through and be like, oh, that's really interesting. Like, I should look into that more. Or if this is not a topic for you, that's okay as well. Because, I mean, this is a very taboo topic for a lot of people. And everyone has different beliefs. And that's what's great about military life is you can have your different beliefs and still kind of connect with other spouses. I'm saying a lot in this episode. Sorry, y'all. But it's just an interesting way to learn something about your community.
There's
in a different
always
way.
going to be ghost stories for...
Oh, always. I mean, they date back for as long as we have, written time. I feel like you can find a ghost story or an encounter of some sorts in writing that goes back hundreds and hundreds of years. They've been around forever. I don't think they're going anywhere. They won't go anywhere because, I mean, they feel like, you know, a weird encounter stands out to somebody. And so it's one of those things where you'll have people report on simple things and weird things and things that they can't explain. And sometimes it can be explained. You know, I love watching Mythbusters. Have you guys ever watched that show? Or Ghost? What's the ghost show that we watch? No, not Ghostbusters. X Factor. Is it the X Factor?
Expedition X.
Expedition X. Okay. So there's a show called Expedition X and Expedition Unknown that they go out and research and do all these testing and things like that. It's one of my favorite shows. Like I think Sabrina asked us in our group recently, like, what is one of your like
comfort shows?
And I love watching those shows because it's just like they go out and they go explore myths and encounters and legends. Like, I mean, things like Bigfoot and things like all those different things. And they go and either debunk the stories that they've had reports, or they go and find more findings and start doing research. And it's really interesting to see that, you know, just because something doesn't seem possible could be possible. And I think that's something that as a society and as humans, I still feel like there's so much out there that we don't know. And so we can't always say that can't be true because of whatever the case may be. And again, this is definitely a taboo subject for people, depending on religion and stuff like that. So if you're listening to this, I respect your beliefs and things like that, but we all have different beliefs and we all have different backgrounds. That's why we're a melting pot of spouses of the military community. So I don't know. I think it's fun. I think it's fun to look at these kind of things. And
my comfort show is Supernatural, so
I was gonna say, I was like, I'm kind of on the other like realm of like we just watch. I mostly watch Supernatural for the men, so
I love those too. But I do like, that's one of our family shows is the expedition shows, and whether it's the history ones and they're researching actual like people that we know did like exist, or if it's more of the spooky aspects of it. But yeah, Supernatural it's definitely a show that we all enjoy.
Yeah, I definitely watch that one for the plot.
Definitely.
Oh, the plot?
Yeah.
No way.
Mm-hmm. But like, and I think that's like why this is so intriguing, because especially like if you're a book girly, or if you are a Vampire Diaries or the
Supernatural ones.
Yeah, like if you're like into those things, like I feel like you're typically more likely to be like interested in these type of stories and things like that. But because it's again like, oh, that's a fictional like things, but this is kind of real, right? So maybe they could be real. Maybe one day I'll have a dean, you know, come into my life and save me from a monster. I don't know, but I think it's just really interesting. And again, it's just an interesting way to connect with your local installation, learn in a different, unique, maybe weird way.
Well, and anything around you. Like I know out there where we were in Fort Huachuca, you have Tombstone, you have Bisbee, and both of which have ghost tours all year round. So like there are other ways, but it's also a fun way. Like my daughter's super into the macabre and the very like creepy stuff. So she is down for that kind of thing. And so
that's Devlin's Devlin's like, can I please listen? Because he's like all into that kind of like interesting stuff. And so
Astrid can tell you anything and everything you need to know about Annabelle. and how she's traveled and the people that have died when the doll has been in that area. And yeah.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
See,
I'm like, okay,
I'm not a horror spooky girly. Like, I don't like scary things, but at the same time, I like spooky things, and that makes no sense as I say it out loud. But I do I like learning about this, like the historical aspect and things. But anything that's got like
possession,
like it, yeah, those obviously like that is a no ghost, and we don't want those ghosties experiences. But I definitely don't want any part of that. But I also feel like I'm thinking more of like Hollywood aspect of it, and that freaks me out. So. Oh yeah, Skinwalker Ranch. I think that's more alien though, or is it ghost? I think that's more like potential like alien abductions, which is a whole new and other spooky topic to go down another rabbit hole. Yeah. Oh yeah, but
there were so many dead cattle.
But I mean, like, just things like that, like, you know, all the different things that we see out there, like, you know, the ghost stories and local legends like Bigfoot, Mothman, all the different ones. North Carolina, like, if you're stationed in Fort Bragg, like, North Carolina has, what do they call them? I can't remember what they call them, but they have, like, there's a legend of, like, wild people, like crazed people that live in the Appalachian Mountains.
Oh yeah, the Appalachian people.
Yeah, and I never really realized like how close those like sightings have been to like where my parents live until like last year, and I was like, huh. So like the legend is like if you hear someone talking to you and you know there's no one there, like keep walking, don't turn around type of thing. Whistle's a big one, yeah. And I was just like, oh, that's like, you know, you have so many of those encounters, and not just in one state. Like it goes like the whole span of the Appalachian Mountains, and then Bigfoot and Mothman. I'm trying to think of other ones that are like, you know,
Mothman has always freaked me out though, because that one there's like so much, like like proof to that, and like that movie. I hated that movie so much because it was way too realistic. Like there was like very little fiction to that movie. I was like, no, I don't like that.
But if you guys haven't watched the Expedition X, I think it's called the X-Files, which is one where they go and research like the mythical ghosty type ones. It's a really interesting show. And they go like out in the wild and use like ghost tools. Yeah, they use different tools. Like they go in, like one is kind of, one's an expert in like paranormal stuff, and the other one is a very scientific based person, and he goes in and tries to come up with scientific reasonings for why this happened, whether it's, you know, he's looking for animals or other things in it that could explain the sightings, and they bring them in together. Obviously it's still a show and there's still a lot of traumatics to it, but it's a very interesting show.
Grimm is also another one of my favorite, just zone out, relax shows.
I haven't watched that show in forever. I don't think I've seen.
They're bringing it back.
Are they? I saw. That was such an interesting, fun show. I feel like there's so many great shows out there about like different.
It's an awesome spin on the actual, like not the fairy tale version of the Brothers Grimm things.
It's kind of dark.
Actual German version.
Yeah, it's kind of dark, which it is a dark thing, but it isn't. That's an interesting. I'm kind of excited to bring it back because I think I only watched like the first 3 seasons of that one, and
they're all streaming on. Is it Peacock? I think because it's NBC.
One of the 500.
But they're all on there because we were bored and like, what are we going to watch? Because it's not quite football season yet.
Mm-hmm.
And we were like, let's restart Grimm because it's, but
that might be a good one to restart. I got to start like with Jeremy being gone. I need to like find shows to binge. So that might be one.
I'll send you a list.
That or I just need to like read because I haven't read a lot. I haven't read a lot, but I have read a lot. I haven't physically read books. I've listened to a lot of books lately. And so like, But I do want to find some really good spooky books to read this season.
I wish they would do like a Grimmish spinoff, but like the dark Disney version.
I'm sure there's something out there.
Like Once Upon a Time tried to kind of get there, but it wasn't in the Grimm-esque way that I wanted. I mean, it was still a good show, but
yeah, I did like Once Upon a Time show. I did really enjoy that one as well.
Yeah,
that was a good. I just rewatched that one not that long ago. That hooked. I don't know what it is about a hooked character, but I know we're going off topic. But Chef's Kiss to like.
Oh, I know.
Like making Hooked a delectable person in any series. It's a Peter. I don't know. Peter Pan weird. It's weird. Peter Pan retellings are interesting aspects, but yeah, I mean, spooky things. It's spooky season. Embrace it. Enjoy it.
I mean, I obviously did. Y'all saw my 3D printed ghost.
I know. I was thinking.
Emotional support, Dr. Pepper.
Mm-hmm. I know. I need to get all my Halloween stuff out. We were at TJ Maxx the other day, and they have all that. Obviously, have Halloween stuff out, and the kids were like, "Can we get this and this?" I was like, "I first need to see what I have, and then maybe we can talk about getting more." But
we bought our first animatronic one, and we set it up in Astrid's room because she went to her dad's, and we set it up in her room so it's motion activated. So when she opened the door, it's Stripe from Gremlins.
Oh, okay.
She was like, "It's so cute," while my other kid is downstairs terrified of it because he can just hear it. Astrid was like, "Can you leave it in here?" And I was like, "No, it's going back downstairs where it was." But I'm glad you like it because it is adorable.
I know my mom is a huge spooky girly too, so she decorates like crazy, and she's taking that over to the coaster. So we have like those like gigantic skeletons all over the place. I
wanted a 12-foot skeleton this year so bad, but
they're everywhere. Like she has them hanging off of the coaster, they're hanging off the building, they are hanging off the sign. So, and then there's like spider webs and stuff. Like, so she goes all out. Like, she makes something new every single year. Like we have tombstones and pumpkins and all sorts of stuff. And so she goes all out every year at the coaster. So, and it's a big hit, but it, it's just one of those things that, everyone.
I'm just here sad because all of our fall and Halloween decorations got lost in the move somewhere, and
I know I'm so sad for
them. 16 years of collecting. Anybody who decorates for holidays knows that none of that is cheap. So it's not like we can just go out and replace it. So we're starting over in that. But
I didn't really decorate last year because like in the house that we lived in, I didn't hang up like a lot of like shelving or anything because of the textures of the wall. And so I didn't have a lot of space to put things. And so this year I'm like, I do have space to put things. And so I'm very excited to bring out, all of our pumpkins and stuff. I'm hoping none of it's broken though, because I do not think I packed it very well when I put it away the last time I put it away. So who knows if it survived? Just a question. I have to go through
I need to get into that. I can pull it down.
I mean, it's spooky season, y'all. We hope that you guys are embracing the chilly weather or not chilly weather, depending on where you're stationed. But it's still hoping for the fall vibes, whether you're going out to pumpkin patches with your families and friends, hot apple cider, Halloween, trick-or-treating, things like that. We hope you guys are having a really great fall. It is holiday mini season within Deployed Love as well. So if you're at one of our installations that has local coordinators, make sure you guys are checking those signups because they are going out right at this time for most of our installations. So keep an eye out for those. And we hope that you guys have a great fall season. And we'll be back with another episode in a couple weeks. And we're going to be soon finishing out our 5th season of the podcast, which is crazy. And starting our 6th year, we're very excited.
Thanks, guys, for hanging out with us.
As always, we like to say Ruckup Buttercup, and we'll see you guys next time.